I find it's not as good as what I usually do with my fancy camera, because, you know, I'm using a little Logitech, I think it's called, camera. Anyway, that's what I have, and we have to use what we have. So I hope everybody is everybody are ready, and well, let's get started. So let's start with this one up here. So I'm going to try and show you. I'm going to start with this petal here. And I usually start, you know, with the petals that are a little bit, you know, on the edges, because it's kind of get my feet wet, so to speak. And I'm just taking some of the lines out, because that's what I do. All right, so I'm going to put water in. And I'm just going to put water in the whole thing. This petal here. Clean water. And I already did my puddles, as you can see. So I'm going to start with, and the puddles I have is Opera Rose. It's my main color here. And if you don't have Opera Rose, use your quinacridone rose and just water it down. And I'm starting at the bottom of the petal where it's, you know, going underneath the petal on top, because that's where it's going to be the darkest. And can you see how it flows in the water into the petal? So I want soft edges inside the petal, and then hard edges wherever one petal overlaps another. There. And I'm going to take some of that off my brush, and then I'm just going to pull that pigment out to the edge of the petal, because most of the edges are lighter. And I have a little bit of cobalt blue here, and I might put just a hint on the tip of my brush, because I do see that there is like, I don't know if it's another petal underneath, has a little bit of like a cobalt blue, more like a lavender tone. It's a bluer tone, and I'm just going to get that in here like that, and hopefully not get a bloom. There's one petal. It's not finished, but it's close enough. So we're going to move over to another petal that is out on the edge and not touching that one. You can't, I mean you can, but you're going to get in trouble. Don't paint two petals next to each other before, you know, they're dry. You know, so if I started painting this one here, it would bleed into the one I already painted. So that's no good. So, and it's also a good idea, I find personally, to kind of jump around when you're painting these things. Let's see. I have one here that's way out here. It's a big one. It's this one that's kind of behind everything. I'm going to paint that. We start with the easy ones, and then we can kind of move in. And it doesn't have to be exact, remember that. At the end of the day, it's not like when you're done with a painting that you've done from a photograph. It's not like in an art gallery. You don't see the painting and then the photograph next to it so that people can pick it apart and say, oh, she didn't get that right. You know, it doesn't matter. This is our artistic interpretation. So I just put water in that petal again, as I do. And here, and if you have any questions, type them in there. And if you type in first the word question in caps, and then, you know, just in regular small caps, your question, then it'll kind of stick out and I'll see it, hopefully. And here, because it's behind and it's out on the edge, and I do see in the picture that it's like maybe has a little bit of a cooler tone, I actually dip my tip of my brush without rinsing it out into a little bit of that cobalt blue. So I'm going to just run that in. And blue or cool colors push back, warm colors bring forward. So by cooling down the pink here on those petals underneath, it kind of pushes them back. And I had a chance to just get a little bit more in here. And then I'm going to go in the direction of the petal and just kind of run a little bit of that in. Can you see that? So that wasn't too hard. Then we have one little here, one little petal there. The brush I'm using is a Mimic Swirl number 8. It has a decent tip on it. This is one I've used for a while. So, you know, especially me who I don't, gonna go in and get a little bit of the cobalt blue in there to push it back, and a little bit of the magenta. The tips will wear down over time, especially if you're kind of rough on them. I do use my brushes to mix my colors. Some painters, they like to use special, you know, like cheap brushes to do the puddle mixing. And hi Elaine from Reno also. And then they, you know, they save their brushes. I am sorry, I can't be bothered. And since I paint with these brushes from Mimic Swirl mainly, they're not very expensive. And so, you know, if I wear a brush out, it is what it is. So we painted that one in. That was this little petal here. And then let's see here. I think maybe we'll better be safe. And I'm going to paint this one up here. And this line here. Let me see. This line here is a little, it's just a little bit of a texture in the petal itself. So, all right, so put some water inside here, just like we did with the other ones. And I'll go over here with a, maybe it's blued down a tiny bit. And again, you can see on every petal, I start at the bottom of the petal, right where it tucks in under the petal on top. And then I can pull my color out. I'm dabbing a little bit more color in there. And again, I might just go in and dab in while it's wet. I can dab in a little bit of that cobalt blue, just to push it down, and put a little bit more of the pink on. And then I'm gonna, and you can see, I hope it doesn't bother you too much, but and you know, that's just how I paint. I paint from whatever side, upside down, whatever that's easiest to me, so I don't get my hand in wet paint. Got outside the line there a little bit. All right, so we got that one painted, and it's a little light out there. I like that. Let's see, here's another one we could paint. This one here. And that is this one. And let's just do that. Get some water inside, and I'm going to paint the whole petal, including those folds. There's a, you know, it's like a fold over. Those we can bring out later. So I'll put a little bit of water in. Let me put that pink in. See, this opera rose is a very, very bright pink. So if you're painting with the permanent rose or the quinacridone rose, you won't get quite this neon rose color, but that's okay. Doesn't matter. And if you don't have cobalt, you just use one of your other blues. If you have French ultramarine blue or your phthalo blue to cool down your pink, that works like a charm. And here I see a little bit of actually a lot of kind of blue tint on right out here. and a little bit on this edge. So I'm going to put that in while it's wet. These things you can do while it's wet. If things start drying on you, just stay out. That's the best you can do, and I do a little bit here too, just to get a little color variation. All right, so let's do this one down here. And that is this one. I think we can paint it. I think we're good. This one's dry. And then we want to go in here. If you have masking fluid on, it's not a problem. You can go in. Let me see. I don't like this line here. I'm just going to take most of that out before I wet it. So I'll go in here. That's behind the stamens that I've masked out, so I can go over them, put some water on. And here I want to put some little bit bluer pink on, so I put a little bit of that cobalt in my pink and on my brush. Of course, you know it's going in, so I want to push it down and away, so it can be a little darker there, lots of pigment on, get a little darkness in there. And then I rinsed out my brush, and now I'm just going to pull that color out. And here. And see, I want it lighter and brighter than that petal underneath, which it is now, so that's good. So lots of water, not so much pigment. And then we can pull this color out here, a little bit of the blue out on the other side, because there it goes under another petal. Rinse out my brush and pull it out before it dries. And make sure your brush is not too wet when you do this, when you rinse it out. Make sure you go on like a sponge or a towel or something like that to get some of that extra water out. Otherwise you're going to get blooms, and it's not going to be the kind of blooms you want. There we go. And I think we can go and paint maybe that one way out there. It's this one. And as we paint petal by petal, it becomes easier and easier to see what you need to do, I find. So it's this one here, I think I said. There, a little bit of pink in my water already. I'm going to pick up. And I want to get this a little bit bluer and darker also, because it's, you know, underneath and it's out on the edge. So I just want to push it down. And there we go. And there. That's good. And let's see. Then we have, I think we can paint this one up here. That's this one. Can you see how that's darker? Quite a bit darker. And it's also like you can see the inside of the petal, and then, you know, it's kind of bent over, so you see the outside, which is a little bit lighter. All right. So I'm going to paint the whole petal. I'm going to take some of these. I like to have my kneaded eraser at the ready, and to kind of remove some of the lines. Now, you know, I don't want to remove too much when I'm doing a demo like this, because, you know, I want you guys to be able to see my lines, but I honestly don't enjoy them too much in my finished painting, and that's just my own feelings about this. Here I'm just going to paint the inside, and remember, it was a little bit darker, so actually I think on this one, just to vary it, I'm going to put in a little bit of my permanent rose. That would be the same as your quinacridone rose, and I'm going to dip in and get a little bit of the cobalt in, And there you could just use your French ultramarine blue or your phthalo blue green shade if you have the Daniel Smith essential watercolor set. And now I'm going to put a little bit of the permanent rose on my brush. No, not permanent rose, my opera rose on my brush. And the permanent rose here will kind of run into it there. Can you see how that gave me a little bit of a different shade? So we want to start introducing that. Just cleaning up the edge here. There. And then we have this one we can't touch because this is still very wet. We can touch this one. That is this petal that is kind of like that. It's this one here. So this goes like this. So it's just a little triangle. And I feel I want to go in and put a little bit more of that permanent rose on that one also. And then put a little bit of the cobalt blue in here to darken that. Like that. And rinse it out, put a little bit of the opera rose on, get that to go in there. Switch it around, and now I'm just spreading the pigment up to the edge here. Okay, goes like that. There. This one, I think that's plenty dry. That is this petal here. So again, I want to go in and kind of tone down these lines before I paint it. Of course, now I know where it is. And I'm going to put water in. See, this line also needs to go way back. There. Put some water in. And this petal is also quite dark, so inside here, so we can put a little bit of the permanent rose in first, like that, then a little bit of the cobalt blue in, just tone it down a little bit, rinse it out, and then I'm going to put some of the opera rose in. And then hopefully everything will blend out nicely. There. And now I'm going to rinse out my brush because I have a lot of pigment on here and I want to have that tip very light to bring it forward. Like that. Almost white. And again, I'm going on my towel and taking the water off my brush. And now while it's still very wet, can you see how I'm dragging out, kind of following the shape of the petal and dragging out a little bit of the pigment. So just fine-tuning my edges, and I left a little sliver here because can you see here there's a very white or very light and then there's very dark in there. Those are the things we'll fine-tune later. But I like, can you see how I already got some shape on this petal because I dragged out that wet pigment to give it a little bit of, you know, texture. So what about this one down here? Can we paint that? Yes, we can. That's this one. Just underneath his little, I don't know what those are called, stinger, his stinger. I don't think bumblebees, do they sting? They might, but they're not very aggressive, they're friendly. But maybe they can sting if they feel the need. Alright, so I'll do this one. And I'll go back to my little bit smaller brush, my number 8. The other one I used for the bigger one was actually number 12. It doesn't matter, use whatever brushes you have that feels comfortable in your hand. That's really what matters. And the same with color. You know, I mean, a lot of times students, especially beginners, they like fret very much over, oh my God, I don't have that color. It really doesn't matter. What matters is light and dark, warm and cool. Those are the things that matter. And if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about, I just filmed a bunch of, I call them color nerd videos, where I go into detail with doing color charts and things like that, and that could be very helpful. So now I go and get a little bit of the Opera Rose on here, and I'm going into my cobalt blue a little bit out here. Kind of feel that I want to do that. And now before things dry, you want to make sure you get these things done before they dry. We want to get the color spread around on the petal here, so we don't get any hard lines or edges that we don't want there. I think that's good. And let's see, we have this big one, so that is this big one that I'm painting now. And again, let's get some water on it. And before I do that, again, I have some of these lines here, they're a little much for me. Just take them out. And again, you don't have to do that. And you know, you could also, if you feel like it, once this is done, you could go in and you could do some pen and ink on it. Especially if you got yours got a little muddled. Pen and ink is a wonderful way of unmuddling stuff. I'm doing some of the permanent rose here with a tiny bit of the cobalt in, just to push it in here at the bottom where it goes under those other petals. I got a little carried away here. There, pick that up. And I think I want to go just like that, up like that. And then I'm going to rinse it out, dab it on my towel, go in and get some of the Opera Rose on. And now it's time to get them all kind of pulled out. And again, the darkest at the bottom, and then we pull it out. And the tips are lighter. And here, there's barely any pigment on, and then this one here, like that. And then we can pull some of that pigment out in the direction of the petal to get a little bit of that shape on it. There. I think that works out just fine. Just fine tune here a little bit. There we go. And especially right here, it's a little bit lighter, so I'm actually going to pull out a little bit of pigment. Alright, let's see where else. Oh, here's another one. Let's see, is this dry? Let's do this one here. That's this one underneath here. It's kind of a little muddled here. It's a little hard to tell. So if we paint this part in. That's that part. You just see part of the side of a petal, and it's quite dark except right out here. And the way I work with these things is usually, if I can't really, I go and paint what I can tell. Because there's always, in these kinds of drawings, there's always going to be areas that you feel a little, what's that? What's going on? We might not feel so sure of what's going on. Then just go and paint the things you can tell, and then those other more muddled areas, they will become apparent. And so I started out with a little bit of the permanent rose with a little bit of the cobalt in, and then I ended up here adding some of the opera rose to get that. It's a petal that's like way in the back, so you don't want it too prominent. And then here is another petal. Actually, here is one where I want to put in a line that kind of disappeared. So this is a petal that kind of goes in like this. It's this petal here, and it's also way in the back, and it has like a turnover there. Get a little bit of those lines out, and then we can paint that in. And I think I want to stick with my number 8 brush. So I am going to paint just the inside of it. I'm going to leave that, the outside of that petal where it's turning over, I'm going to leave that to be painted separately, I think. You could do it either way, but that's what I chose to do here. There's not one way of doing these things, there's many ways of doing these things. I tend to try and do it as easily as possible. So I'm wetting the area, and it's quite dark, so that's definitely one where I might even dip into my real dark, which is my permanent magenta. And if you don't have permanent magenta, don't freak out. It's okay. And now I put some of the opera rose in. You could use the permanent rose or the quinacridone rose. That would work like a charm too. And maybe get a little bit more of that in here. And you could darken them with a little bit of blue, whatever blue you're using. And I'm gonna go and get a little bit of the cobalt blue in also here to just kind of tone it down. And then opera rose. And now it's time to just pull it out. So that means clean my brush so it's not too damp or too wet. Just damp, and I can pull the pigment out before it dries, so get that lighter edge. There we have that. And there's really not that much direction on this one here, maybe a little bit that way. You can dry while it's still wet. You can only do this if it's still wet, and if you just have your brush just damp. All right, I'm good with that for now. Then what do we have going on here? That's another kind of sort of, we just painted that one. So that's another, that's this one. So that's kind of like the side view of a part of a petal. So let's get that in. And we want to go in around here. See, in this area, as you get into the center, that's where things get a little bit kind of confusing, because the petals are like, curled up and, half overlapping and things like that. So let's go in with some permanent rose, blued down with a little bit of the cobalt or whatever blue you are using. And so we want to push this one in here because there's a bunch of petals that I want to push out. So to make them look brighter, I can put something a little bit duller and bluer underneath. And then I'm going to go in and get my Opera Rose, and then I'm going to have these meet so that it's not like a sudden change of color, it's gradual. And then it gets lighter as it comes out here. And then it gets actually a little bit bluer as it gets to the end here. I want to get a little bit of that there. And then I just want to pull it out like that. There. Okay. And can you see we're moving right along? How are you guys doing? Are you doing well? Are you painting along, or are you just watching? Let's see here. So here is a little tiny one. Let's paint that. That's so easy. And again, I'm going to go in, clean up some of these lines. And since it's so tiny, we're not going to put water in first. We're just going to put some of this more, let me pull that down so you can see better, kind of cobalt blue mix with permanent rose, and even put a little bit of the permanent magenta in here to really push it back. And since, you know, now we're beginning to get to the point where we can start looking at our painting and not really worry so much about what's going on my picture, because now we're getting enough color on our painting that it's beginning to tell us what it needs, and not, you know, so at some point in a painting, your own painting becomes your reference. You don't have to worry so much about what's going on your reference photo. Going back to what I said earlier, that, you know, when it's all said and done, a painting is not hung next to the photograph that was the reference. Hey Beverly, Salt Lake City checking in. Yeah, I mean, for many of you, especially if you're kind of beginners, I think it is a good idea to just watch what I'm doing, and then, you know, this will be available for replay. So so you can watch it again, or you can just kind of do some of it and, you know, finish it up later after this live stream is over. And I'm just doing some of my little own little it's my own little hiccup. It's this thing about, you know, I don't like the lines. I mean, I need them, you know, to guide me, but I don't like to see them. All right, so let's see what we can do here. Here's a couple of those turned over leaves that we have. This one, and then we have this one. So these two we could paint now, and they will be a little bit lighter, it looks like, than the inside there. So let's do that. And I'm just going to put on very watered down Opera Rose, and I'm just going to paint it straight on like that. And then I'm going to rinse out my brush, dab it on my towel or sponge or whatever you use to dab your brushes on, and then just going to pull it out like that. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the next one we have here. And remember This is just the first layer of color we're putting on here. We can go in and darken areas afterwards. We can fix edges afterwards. We can lift out a little bit of color if we need to. So we don't have to get it like completely perfect the first go around. Now since we are moving this way, so I painted in that fold and that fold. And then we have this one, and that actually also has a fold that we didn't paint in the first time around. So let's go in and paint that in. And here I'm just putting a little bit of that permanent rose, opera rose on at the edge here, and then I'm just going to try and pull it out. So got a little bit more color here, and then I need to go in once that's dry and then darken here. But we'll do that later. We can do, now we can't do that one, but we can do this one here. That's this one. So that's one petal, but you see like the inside of it and the outside. And there's another petal here that's kind of going around there, so it's a whole convoluted thing. Let's just do it in 2 stages. So we paint the outside first, and we have to paint that around this petal. So we'll do that, and that way it becomes clearer for us when we go and do it like this. Then it's easier for us to see what is going on. So that would also be kind of sort of a little bit darker in here. We need it a little darker here so we can pull out and push out this petal that is on top of it. And then it'll be a little bit more opera. That was very, very concentrated. Not really what I wanted, but that's okay. We can pull it out. Opera rose is one of the colors that lifts fairly easily. There, I like it. We also have to start thinking about, focal area and things like that. And we want to have the brightest colors near the focal area. And the focal area, no doubt, will be our bumblebee, where our bumblebee is. Because anytime you have anything alive, so man or animal, or something man-made, that automatically draws our attention. So we can also paint this one here. That's this one. We just paint the outside, and then we can later paint the inside. And again, I think I want to go in. Oh no, we can't paint that. Why can't we paint that, folks? Because this one is touching. Never mind. Let's go down here instead. Now we're going down to this one. And that has a real dark and a little bit yellow in there. You see that? How interesting is that? That's going to be fun. And I'm going in and I'm going to take some of those pencil lines. And then, let's see. I think my size 8 brush will be good for that. And I want to take this line out a little bit more. And there's actually a line that I should put in, because this kind of goes like this. There. And like that. So this is where we have that darkness. So it helps if you talk to yourself when you do these things. Okay, so this is going to be super fun. That's going to be kind of a new take, new colors we have to get in here. So first we're going to wet it. And let's get some water on. That's our insurance against hard lines inside our petals. You can see all the petals, everything is soft inside, and then the hard lines is everywhere where the petal overlap each other. So that makes it. Beverly, the reference photo, I will post that. It's already on my Instagram for those of you that watch, follow me on Instagram, but I'll post it on my Facebook page when I'm done with this live stream, so you have the reference photo. Or actually, you know what, I'll do that, and I'll probably also send out a little post for all my newsletter, in my newsletter, for all of those that follow me on my newsletter. And I think that's quite a few of you. And if you don't, you can head over to my website and sign up for my newsletter. Then you get the updates on everything I'm up to. And I don't send out newsletters, don't worry. It's not like you're going to get a newsletter every day. I have better things to do, folks. So it'll be like when I have something to report, so to speak. I have a little bit of my transparent yellow, but whatever yellow you have, you can use that, because can you see there's like a little bit of yellow in there? So I'm going to put a little bit of that in, and then I'm going to put my opera rose in here and get those two to just kind of mingle a little bit, so I get like a soft transition. And you can see I'm leaving myself a little bit of space at the bottom there, because that's going to be super dark. I'm not sure I can get that super dark in just yet. I'm afraid that's going to run too much and then muddy up my petal. I don't want that to happen. And I put a little bit more of the opera rose fresh on my brush now, so that I'm getting over to the more pink and not having it, you know, that, I guess kind of a, I guess you can say it's kind of a peachy almost color. And I'm just dragging out that opera rose to the edge of this petal, and so it's almost white here. And you know, in watercolor we can always darken things. It's harder if we want to lighten things up again. So I'm just going to keep it very light for now. And now that things are sinking into the paper more, I'm going to go in and probably, I think I'm going to go in and do a little tiny bit of my French ultramarine blue I have here. It's very thick, and I think I want to put that in here before that yellow dries completely, to get some of that real dark in here. And I'm going to go in and get a little tiny bit of the permanent magenta on. So you could also use your quinacridone rose for this. I'm just trying to get that darkness without completely losing that yellow. So I'm just barely touching there, kind of like that. And I need to do a little bit more. Oops, that was more than I wanted, but that's okay. I rinsed out my brush, and then I'm just going to go in and just pull up a little bit. So I have a little bit of that yellow shine underneath. I think I'll leave it like that. You know, you don't want to fuddle around with that too much. So what can we do? We can do this one here. That's a nice big one. So that is this one. And here you can see that was the one that was the one we just painted. That was this one here. I still have to work some more on it, but it's okay. So now we're going to do this one, which is this one. And again, just want to go in, take care of my lines, get them out of there if I can. And I'm going to flip my reference over so I have it. So this is quite dark in there. And then it's quite very, very light out here. So first, whoops, still a little pink on. Doesn't matter so much, but still. It's amazing if you paint with dirty water, you can get these ghost lines sometimes that you were not so happy with, or you will not be so happy with. All right, so it's quite dark in there. So that means I think I'm going to go to my permanent rose and blue it down a little bit with my cobalt. And I'm going to go like this and around here and here. Again, like all the other petals, we start at the bottom of the petal, and that will always be the darkest part of it because it's tucked in under the petal on top. So now I'm going to go in and get some of my opera rose on and get that to mix and mingle with that darker rose I put on. And again, I keep going back to my towel and dabbing my brush, and now I cleaned it out and I dabbed it again, and now I want to pull it out so that I get that very light edge of this petal. Light brings forward, dark pushes back. That's how that works. And I'm going to try and see if I can maybe drag a little bit of the petal color out, kind of give this shape. There we go. Good enough for now. Let's do this one. And that is this one. So it has a very light edge there, let's remember that. And again, just want to check some of those lines out. And can you see how, isn't it beginning to look like a flower now? So question, I didn't freehand this. I usually use my light box and then I trace and then I make my own adjustments. I do a pretty basic trace, and then I go in afterwards and fine tune the lines so that I understand them for a painting like this, where I want to follow along and do a lesson. I find that's the easiest. So that was Deborah that asked that. But if you're a good drawer, if you like to draw, you know, that's totally a great option too. So we wanted to do this one here, and I want to get my number 8 brush, and then we are making a mental note to ourselves that this side is very light, and that's because our light is actually, we didn't talk about that, but our light is coming from there. That's why there's reflections in the eye and on the wings on this side. And again, that's why this petal is light on that side and it's a little bit dark on this other side. It's always good to know where your light is coming from. So I'm going to go in and start with a little bit darker, and I want to have it darker than that color because it's underneath, right? So we always want to have, oops, that was a hair. Always want to have our petal below a little bit darker than the petal above. So that you push down the petal that's below. And that's why I like to put some blue in, because, you know, cool pushes down, remember, and light brings forward. And I want to have it a little darker, like that. Just run up and then clean it out. And a little bit of the opera rose on, and then I'm going to go in here and go all the way out to the edge here. And I wanted to remember that this side is a lighter because it's actually the petal turned over and catching the light. So right now you can't really tell that because we need to darken underneath, but if I darken here it's going to flow out because everything's wet, so we have to wait with that. But remember, in watercolor we paint from light to dark, light to dark. So it's better to err or start out lighter than you want to end up, and I just put a little bit of a darker color on the tip of my brush because I wanted to get a little bit of texture on. I think I need a little texture here. There, kind of like that. You can see. It's, you know, since the photograph is blown up a lot, there's a lot of the detail has been lost, but that's okay because that I like to make up myself. So we can paint this one. That's this one. And I will just get the lines here. This is also a little too much. So let's just put some water on this one. And put that darker color underneath here. And here I'm going quite dark. So I want to get a little drama in here. So that is permanent magenta with a little bit of the cobalt blue in. There. And then rinse it out and get some more of my opera rose and introduce that. And we want to make sure we don't get any of those hard edges inside the petal, if we can help it. Unless, you know, and these edges are not hard either. They're like flowy and soft. That's what we want inside. And I'm going to rinse it out a little bit. Make sure I don't have too much water on. And then we're going to pull it out like that. And like this. There you go. And I'm just going to pull out while I can with the tip of my brush. Can you see how I get a little bit of texture that way? Soft and nice. And there. There we have that. And slowly but surely our flower is coming to life. And then we'll go over and do this petal here. Same procedure. I'm going to kind of take the pencil lines out as much as I can and still see what's going on. So that's this one here. So that's this one here. So this edge is catching some light and it's darker in there. So here we go. My water is slightly pink, but that's okay, I can live with that. As long as I get paint on fairly quickly, I should be okay. And actually, let's see, quite dark again. Put a little bit of that in. Let's get some drama in here. Pull that out like that and like that. And then I rinse it out and get some of that pale opera rose in, pale and bright. Let that just kind of mix in here. And I'm dabbing off my brush. Maybe I should clean it out and just get a little bit more of the pure bright opera rose in and get my tip nice and light. Nice and light, almost white. There. And then I want to get a little bit of that darker color on my brush, the tip of my brush. I don't want to take it out of there. Dab in a little bit more darkness right there while we can. And it has this kind of a line there. Just want to get some of that in. A little bit of direction, not quite as dark there. There. Can you see how that gave a little bit of shape to it? Okay. So here, let's go in and do this one here. This is this one, and so we need to get the outside of this petal here painted. I think we need a smaller brush for that. And I'm going to put a little bit of water in. And since the light is coming from here, it's actually hitting on this edge, but it's very dark on this edge. So now we're getting into some of those fun little nitty-gritty ones. So I make it quite dark and a blue tone, a little bit of a blue tone. So that's a little bit of the cobalt blue with a permanent magenta. And now I rinsed out my brush, and then this edge that I say is lighter, I want to have it lighter, so I'm putting some of that color in, and then they meet up here. And I rinse out my brush, get a little bit more of that opera rose on, and keep that edge light. I think that worked out pretty okay. A little bit of that dark there, and then they can go up like that. Okay, can you see that? That worked out alrighty. And then let's see. Yeah, we can paint this one here. So that would be this one. So see, because of the light, it is very light over there, and it has a little lightness there. And then this is its petal turned around. So we actually need to go in, that goes like that, there. And I'm only going to paint the inside, not the turn over. And I'm going to take some of these lines out because I find them less than desirable. Now I know, I can tell what's going on. I don't need them. So, very light on this side, we have to remember that. And then it's quite dark in here. There. Got the water on. And let's again, let's go in and get a darker version in here, in the bottom here. And then remember that it's really light kind of on this side, So let's get some of the upper rows, and I'm just going to flip it around. And remember, we want the colors to just have a nice seamless transition. And here it's very, very light, so barely any pigment on this side here. I'm going to rinse out my brush, and then the edge is quite light there too. Sorry I'm flipping it around so much, but you know, I have to have access, so to speak, to my petal without getting into wet paint, and so that the strokes are easy to execute, so to speak. Clean up here. See, it was a little ragged, and then it goes like this. There. And I'm gonna rinse out my brush, and just with a damp brush I'm just gonna soften these a little bit. There. Can you see how it starts giving the flower some direction? So that means we can't paint that one, but we have stuff going on over here that we can paint. So here is, again, it's a little convoluted, but here is a petal that's overlapping the one we already painted here. So we can paint that one, and then there's one more petal that actually also has a little overlap, and we painted these two here. So this one is the one we paint first, and it's also going underneath those stamens that I masked out. So we want to get some color on and underneath there. Here I just went in with my ochre, and I'm just going to go out like this, keep it quite light, and I'm going to darken it a little bit underneath here and just kind of let that move out on its own. And it's a little bit darker right on that side. There. And I think this is not quite safe yet. So we have here this was this one, and then it has that little curl over, and then there's this very dark one that has a little bend on the petal. I'm going to take some of those lines out. So I just want to make sure that I protect this curl around. And then in here, in this little area, that's where it's very, very dark. Just like there. So let's try and get that in. And probably need a number 8 brush. And I am going to paint this with the turn, because it's not really a turnover, it's just like a fold in the petal, so that this outer edge here that I'm putting water on right now is actually catching the light. And then there's catching some light here, and then it's like super dark in that little area in there. So that's gonna be interesting. Let's do like we did last time. I think that worked out quite well with putting in a little bit of that yellow. So get that little bit of a glow. And then let's go and put some of the opera rose in here. We can darken that, you know, the areas that need to be darkened later. Goes like that, and it goes like that. And it's quite light right there also. And on this edge it's also light because it's catching the light. And then this one is super light. There. And then as things are settling in there but not dry, I'm going to get my smaller number 4 brush, and I'm gonna go in, and last time we put a little bit of French ultramarine blue, and we're gonna do that again. And then we got some of our permanent magenta, so let's do that. Permanent magenta and the yellow, they're like complementary colors, so they are going to muddy each other out, and that's, you know, fine in this area. And I want to have a little bit more of that yellow glow here, that side. And just pull that out, get that darkness, and even darker here. And I don't want it to look blue necessarily. There. I think that looks pretty good for now anyway. There. Oops, that magenta, and just pull it like that. Yeah, I think that's almost there. A little bit more of that yellow glow. And here we are. There you can see that's what we were working on, this one here. So we still have that edge there that actually, I don't know, if, probably not a good idea to do it now. Whenever things are beginning to dry, it's matte, but it's still not dry, that is the most dangerous time to go into a watercolor. So it's better to, we can always darken this area, remember, when everything's dry, but we can get blooms and stuff like that if we try and go in when it's still damp. So let's follow our own advice and not do that. And then here I see some texture here that I have no idea how that got there. Who knows? I'm not going to worry about it. We have a couple of these little turnovers, so to speak. This little area and this little area. And they're both lighter than what's behind them. And luckily, you know, I kept this very dark and I kept this very dark. So if we just go in with a small brush, just wet on dry, and then put a little bit of the opera rose on. And again, I start here, and I can even dab in maybe a little bit of the permanent rose right here in the crevice. Rinse out my brush and spread the color out like this. And there we have that. Like that. Same story in there. Get a little bit of that opera rose on and rinse it out, have a damp brush and just pull it out for that outside of the petal. And again, darken a little tiny bit in here, there. Those are just little tiny details that helps complete the picture. And I have some, you know, and that will always be some little edges here. Can you see? Now I'm fixing it. There'll be some little edges that need fixing. Not a big deal. Let's see here. We did that one. We are missing this one, and it also has a little bit of an overturned edge that I didn't draw in, like that. There, and it's out on the edge there. I want to make it quite dark in here in between. So see what happens when we do this. So I want to make that quite dark because it has to push out those two petals. So I'm going to up the ante, so to speak. And I'll take some of the cobalt blue with whatever I have here, permanent rose. And I'm going to put that in between these two other petals that I already painted. And on this one here, I'm going to try and leave that little bit of a white edge if I can. So that goes in like that. And now, and it's also kind of like that. And now I want to go in with my opera rose and start from down here. And then like that, and like that. There. You see that? And I think I want to go in while I can, hopefully I can, and I want to get a couple of these markings on because I see them there. And then the outside here, can actually paint that in. And leave a little tiny bit. And I have a barely damp brush and I'm just going to whisk it. There. Leave it alone. So we're getting there, folks. Almost all the petals painted in. So we have this one here that we can paint now. That's this petal. See, it also has a little bit of yellow. Very little, not very much, but a little bit. So let's get that in. And let me just check my drawing here. So this one goes in like that. And then there's like that. So there's a little edge there. Right, let's get some water on first. And I don't think I mentioned this in this video, but I always leave myself a little space out to the outer edges because the water has a tendency to creep out, and then, you know, it'll creep into the next petal and I'll get it all muddled up. So I always do that. So I'm going to go in because I see a hint, not much, but a hint of a little bit of yellow here in the bottom of this petal, because, you know, it's getting closer to where the stamens are, just like these other areas. And then I'm going to go in with some opera rose. I need some fresh opera rose here. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to start with the opera rose here, because now again I want to make sure I, you know, still get some of that brightness. We're getting closer to the focal area. And blue it down a little bit here and here, just dab it in. I'm going to rinse out my brush, put a little bit more of the opera rose on and pull it out. And I'm going to make sure that I don't spread that yellow around. That yellow is a very strong color. And now we're just going to go in, put a little bit more of the pure opera rose on, and then rinse out our brush, and then let's pull this out. And again, I want the tip of this petal to be very, very light. Of course, the light is hitting it. And get a little bit more of that. Darken it with a little tiny bit darkness down here. Just dabbed in a little bit of that French ultramarine blue with a little bit of the permanent magenta in, just to darken it a little bit down there. You want to have that little bit of darkness, and then here just fixing an edge there. And then we have a couple of little texture thingamajigs there. I like that. I think that's good. And then we have this one here, which is the inside of that petal where we already painted the outside, and it's also very dark, comparatively very dark. Just taking some of these lines out, and let's put a little bit of water inside. You can see it because it's dirty water. That's okay. And then I want to make that really dark and fairly bright. So I'm actually going to start with permanent magenta. Just get it out there to the water. And it is quite dark underneath here. There. Now I'm going to rinse it out, take the water off, and get some of that permanent magenta on my brush. No, opera rose, sorry. Opera rose. And before the permanent magenta dries on me, I'm going to go back into that and get that to mingle with my opera rose. And I'm going to rinse my brush out, and then this part of it is still quite light. There. Can you see that? Oh, that gave it a nice shape. And you can see also in the photo there is that lighter edge there, that lighter edge. And let's see, what can we paint? Oh, there's this tiny little thing here. The outside curled around. That's this one here. Let's just get that in. It's just super little tiny area. And I'm gonna get some opera rose. It's pretty dark actually. So let's, darken it up with some cobalt. And it goes like this around that other thing. And I do want the edge of it to be a little bit lighter. So just pull that out. There. And then down here we have a couple of areas that need to be painted. So this one here is this one. There. So we're going to paint that. And again, let's put some water on. Like here. And want to keep it fairly dark, but not as dark as that. There. And some of the opera rose on here to make it a little brighter. And then it goes a little bit darker here, and then there's that fold over that also is a little bit lighter. Should have probably used a bigger brush, but. And then I want to get it fairly light here. And then put this in also. We'll have to go in and darken a few places once we do the second go around, but that's easily done. Really go in here with just a little bit of that darker on the tip of my brush. There. And then we have this one. This petal here. And this petal here. So I think, let me paint this one first. And again, I want to kind of dab out a little bit here. And I'm going to put water on. And then we're going to put some pigment on. It's quite dark at the bottom here, which I will get in later. Right now I just want to get, and let's do it more bright opera here and here. And then it has like a little bit of a thing like that going down, so I'm putting a little bit of the cobalt blue opera mix on here to just get that in, and going in and doing a little bit more of that with some of the permanent rose. It has these directional strokes, so to speak. And now it's very light and quite bright here. There. And maybe even pull out a little bit like that. There. Then we can't paint the inside there, we can't paint that one yet. But we have a very purpley underneath the, you can paint the petals underneath the bumblebee. So there's a petal. So let's just get that in. Goes like this. And actually I am going to paint over the bumblebee's wing there, because you know those wings are kind of see-through, and I already masked out where I wanted to have the little bit of highlights. Can you see that when you look at it? You see how you can see some of the pink underneath there? And I do have it masked out, and there is a little bit of, you know, since you see through the wing, it's dark, but it's has a little bit of the petal that you can see through. And let's get that in. The petal is away from the light, so we're going to do it a little bit more bluish, and goes in here. We want to have these nice, little bit darker colors underneath the yellow stamen. And now I'm going to rinse out, get some of that bright opera rose on. And just paint like that. And then, while it's still damp, I'm going to grab my smaller number 4 brush and get some of that more purpley color with a cobalt blue, and it has like more folds here, so let's try and see if we can get some of those in while it's still damp. Like that. There. And there's actually also one here. See, now this one, we can get that one in now. That. And then rinse it out. Soften the edge. Soften the edge. Just so we get a little bit of that in there. So this is what we got. I think we're getting there. And we can paint this one up here also very, very purpley. So let's just see if we can get a little bit of that. So that's underneath the bumblebee, but see how dark the bumblebee is, so we don't have to worry about painting around the legs or anything. We'll just put a little bit of water in. Goes down like that. There. And then get some of that color in here. Underneath, and like that. And it's lighter out there on that edge, so let's get that in. So I rinsed out my brush, put a little bit of the opera rose on. Around his little face, there. And and it's a little, getting a little darker in here and down here, really dark. And let's put a little bit more blue in there. And I'm doing this on dry, so I can't be dilly-dallying too much. Get some more the pink in. And just painting that down like that to here. And we'll, not worry about his leg that we painted over here, because it's going to be black-ish. Just don't want a hard line right there, so I'm just going to drag it in there. Okay. Let's see, so that's his little bum, and there is a little turnover from that leaf. So let's see, so we painted this one, we painted this stuff underneath here. So we still have this petal, and we have this little part of that petal that we painted. So we're just going to put that in, and that's just a little bit of slightly dirtied down Opera Rose, and it's getting that really darkened a little bit here, like that. And then we have that little part underneath the bum of the bumblebee, and that goes like this, and there's a little bit of yellow there again, right there. See that? And it's quite bright pink. That's his bum, that's his little leg, and we're just going to do it like that. There. And then I think we have what we need. What else is missing? So we have a couple of really dark spots here that we need to get in, and then we have this one. And we have that. So here we just have, that's an easy one, we just have this little guy. So I'll put a little bit of water in here. And then I'm going to do it quite dark. To push those other ones out. And put some of the Opera Rose in. So I started out with the permanent magenta, and then I'm just going to do like this. Doom. And we have one more petal in here that needs to be painted, and that's like this one where you see the inside super dark, and then you see this has a little fold there, catches the light, this catches the light, and then you have the back side of it. So that's what we're going to be painting in now. We start with the inside, and that's going to be very dark. because that is dark and it needs to push out this one. So I think number 8 would be the right size for that. Just put a little bit of water in. And then I want to put the permanent magenta in to get some of that darkness. And it's especially dark down here. And then I think I need to go with a smaller brush. Then I'm going to go in and get the Opera Rose and get that to mix and mingle with the permanent magenta. And here we go. And it is quite dark, but it is a little bit lighter on this side, so I'm just going to soften that edge out. So I cleaned out my brush and took the water off just so I can get that. Like there's a little, can you see that? Little bit of lighter area, and you want to have that nice and soft. And I think I can actually more or less paint the outside here, because there is a little light edge in between. So let's go in and put some water on, and then I'm going to go mainly with the Opera Rose here, get it nice and bright. Little bit darker as we go down here, away from the light. And then rinse out my brush, go in and spread the love around here. So we want to have a light edge on there. And then it gets a little bit darker right underneath here. These are little nitty-gritty things, and they go kind of, there's a little bit of that direction on because it's on the outside. There, I think that's good enough. Let that dry for just a second. And then I have one other this little area down there. That's this area here. Just needs some kind of muddled down pink on it. It's away from the light, so I'm not going to put a super bright color on. There. I think this one also has. Clean that edge up. This one here, now I'm going to go in, while I wait for areas to dry, I'm going to go in and darken a few areas that I feel needs darkening. Can you see here, this area needs to be darkened, this area here. So the way we can do that is go in with a darker color, quite wet, and can you see I'm doing kind of like a triangular little shape. Then I rinse out my brush and dab it, and so it's just damp, not wet, and then I can go in just with the tip of my brush. I start dragging that color out, and then I need to take it off my brush, it's dirty again, and then clean water. And then before things dry, I have to go in and continue like that. So things are, you know, not a stark change, but a very light change. But it kind of pushed everything in. And I think I need to push in a little bit over here actually. So I have a little bit of a bluish color on, purpley color on from my puddle with a cobalt blue, and I just kind of do the same thing and make sure that you lose the edge, we call this, so that you don't get these ghost lines that all of a sudden show up when everything dries. All right, I think it's dry enough in here. Just want to get the last little pencil lines out if I can. And just get a little bit of color on that edge here. It's this edge here. So this part of the edge is the lightest, so that means I'm going to put a little bit of water on, not too much, and this might have been too much. And then I'm going to put some of my slightly dirtied down Opera Rose on the inside, away from the edge that has the light, which is the outside edge. So I'm putting a little bit of that color on here, and I'm rinsing out my brush, and then I'm going in with a damp brush and just tickling the edges, so to speak, and just getting that color softly distributed. And I think here I don't even need any color on my brush. I just need to soften this white edge a little bit there. And then, I don't know if that's dry enough. I feel I need to go in with just a hint of color on my brush and just go in and get a little bit of darkness right behind those lighter edges, and then with a damp brush just softening that edge there. Just gives it a little bit more shape. And we have an area here that we need to darken. This white doesn't belong there. Darken and a little cool. So I'm going to go in here with a mixture of my cobalt blue and the pinks, and I'm going to go out and darken like this, and then I'm going to rinse out my brush, and then I'm going to soften out this edge. See that? Pushed it in. And probably should do the same on the other side. So these are just a little final details. And there we go. So all this darkening is going to help getting more dimension on the painting. And since this is a live stream and we are, I know it gets kind of boring after a while watching this, just want to show you the principles. So I darken that a little bit, and now we need to get to our bumblebee, because that's really, I want to show you that. So I'm going to get some of the lines off, and I have to be careful here because don't want to get the masking off quite yet. So the bumblebee. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of water in my yellow, and so here's some of my yellow. I'm going to put clean yellow over here, And I think I'm gonna just make it a little bit of a warmer yellow. So for those of you that have the Daniel Smith Essential set, I would say that you can use, you have two wonderful yellows. You can use the Hansa Yellow Light and then mix some of the New Gambosian. That would be an awesome color combination. So on the little bumblebee, he has yellow markings. And where's the one I practiced? I practiced the bumblebee here. Put a little bumblebee here. So I'm gonna put water in the yellow parts. So there's yellow. Oops. Let's take that out. That was dirty water. I think I gave myself an extra cup so I could have clean at the end here. I'm going to put water on where the yellow is. And see how I warmed up that transparent yellow that I have? So I'm going to put a whole bunch of that in there. And then it has yellow here on the bum. Up underneath the wing there, and then here. So I'm putting a lot of water in. And then I'm going in again with this beautiful warm yellow that I have. Can warm it up even a little bit more. And it's nice if you have little color variants in these yellows. So I think this looks good. And then we are going to make ourselves a really dark blackish color. So that is cobalt blue, no, not cobalt blue, French ultramarine blue with some burnt sienna in it and not too much water. And then let's see, so he's dark up here, and see, I want them to touch a little bit so I get like that fuzzy edge. And so that's why you have to do it all in kind of like one go. And let's get some more. And French ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, those are absolutely wonderful combinations for dark browns and blacks and grays. So I'm doing this like that. And then he is also, and I want to get it in, so I've got to get a move on. I want to get it in while things will still bleed into each other a little bit, so I just can't be dilly-dallying too much. So the body, can you see? And then you can also dab into a little bit of the burnt sienna to get a little color variance. And then let's get his other part of his body, like there. And again, it's really crucial, I find, that you get the colors to mix a little bit so you get that fuzzy feel. And so we want to do it on the head too, here, before that gets too dry. And I'm going to go around his eye. But here, there we have it. There. And there's his wing. We'll deal with the wing later. And it's good to get a little color variance. And I don't mind if there's some little white sparkles here and there. Let's see. And then here it's his little legs, his tummy. of the burnt sienna, let it mix and mingle. And then there's like straight here by the wings, it's more straight. And then his little belly here, that's also very fuzzy. Like that. Sorry about the ding ding. And then let's see here, his wings. And then it goes, we need a little bit more bum on him. Like that. And while you're at it, and before it's dry, if you can take like a little brush or something, and you can even take your credit card, maybe I need to do that, and get some of these little fuzz marks. Make sure he looks nice and fuzzy. Fuzz up these lines. And I'm going to get my credit card so I can also do that. So with a cut up credit card, you can kind of drag out some of these little hairs. Make sure it doesn't get too regular, because then it doesn't look right. But just like that. And then we want to get his little legs in. His nice black little legs. And they're like, and they're also a little fuzzy on the top part, and then they get less fuzzy. They get less fuzzy, but still a little fuzz here and there. So the whole idea is you want to make him nice and fuzzy. And kind of like that. And then we get one more leg here. And it's good to have some little white sparkle here and there. There. And then get some more little markings on his little tummy and stuff. And then here is his hind leg. And you can see how I vary the color a little bit and keep it nice and fuzzy. That one disappears underneath this petal. And then he has one more little leg that comes here. Like that. And kind of disappears in there. And a little bit more blue on that one. And then, so we've got that one. And now I'm just dabbing in a little bit more color. And then he has this little guy, you know, the little, it comes like that. Fuzz him out a little bit more. And then he has his eye, and I feel the eye is a little bit more on the blue side, bluish black. Putting that in like that, and we can't really, I mean, you can just see basically the highlight. And then we want to give him his wings, give this little guy wings, and they are, we have a little bit of that flower underneath, and then I'm going to start out with a little bit of the cobalt blue with a little bit of the burnt sienna in for the lighter part of the wings. Take some of that, and I'm just going to drag it out like this. You know, I want to get that feel, you know, because they are like see-through, but then because they are see-through, you see some of the darkness from his body on them is underneath here. So I'm just kind of doing like kind of a dry brushing. And want to see some of the pink underneath. And some of his dark body. I think I want to rinse that out, put a little bit more of that. There. And then once we take, I think that looks pretty good. Once we take the masking fluid off, we can fine tune it. And I just need to go in and put a little bit more pink underneath here. There's some little different there. While he dries and we think about it a little bit, well, maybe I can scrape out a few more little markings. Let's not go crazy with that. All right, we can take the masking fluid off our stamens here since it's dry. Boy, you guys are still hanging in there. That's pretty good. I think that's okay. Did I get it all off? I think I did. All right, so then we'll just go in first with a little bit of that yellow and just dabble it in. And it's okay if there's some little white sparkles here and there, because you know some of them are catching the light. And there we are. And then we want to go in and tone them down a little bit. So I think I want to go in and do a little bit of the pink on. Just give it a little color variance. There. And then I want to go in maybe with a little bit of the burnt sienna. Grade down a little bit, so that's a little bit of the bumblebee color, and let's go in and just, while it's still a little bit damp, just tap in a little bit of that, just, you know, because these things, they're also casting little shadows and stuff like that. So I'm just indicating that. I think that's That's pretty okay. And now I just want to show you how you can make this. I mean, this is okay. It's not as dramatic as I would like it to be. So now is the time to go in and add the drama. So that means we can go in with some of the shadow colors. So I'm going to build myself a nice shadow color here with some cobalt blue, some burnt sienna, no, not burnt sienna, cobalt blue and permanent magenta. A little bit of the, whatever, the colors we have already used basically is what it is. And then you can go in and find all these little corners, so to speak, where petals are tucking under, and put some shadow color in. And with, you know, this is a two brush approach that I like to use, but you don't have to do that. Then in the other hand I have a clean damp brush where I can pull out the color. Can you see how when you do that, I'm going to do a couple more so you can see, the more you do that, the more depth you get on your painting. Like that. Then underneath here could also be a little bit of a shadow to bring out that edge in here in this little corner. So basically what you do is you go in and you find all those little areas where you could go in and deepen the contrast. For instance here, and it doesn't all have to be with that same color. Some places that would be maybe a little too much. So here, see? There's that. And can you see how slowly but surely you can really build up the drama? And just a little bit more. And then in here. So this part of it is something that takes quite a bit of time, and it's all the same principle, so it's not, you know, I'm not going to spend, you know, another who knows how many hours boring you with this, but I just want to show you how you do it. You find all those little areas where you can put in some more darkness to really bring out this shape and darken those tucked in corners to bring out the petals on top. And just make sure you have the edges nice and soft. And this is also where you can go in and you know, fix shapes. There'll be, you know, I certainly have lots of them where, you know, I wasn't as precise as maybe I would have liked to have been, but I can go in and then, you know, clean that up. And make sure you don't have too much water on that brush that you lose the edge with, because that can spell disaster. Go in and do a little bit more here. And then I also want to darken a little bit underneath right there. Give it more shape. There. I hope you can see how that really kicks up the drama and the effects. There was one here that I also neglected to really spell out. Goes like that. And then there's that. And there's, you know, lots and lots and lots of little areas where we can improve and make it more dramatic, depending on your temperament and what you want to do. There's no right and wrong with these things. So this is a pretty tight painting, it's not a loose one. You could totally paint this type of a flower much looser and just kind of hint at the petals and I'm just thinking here, and the shapes. But I wanted to show you how you can do this type of a painting. And it's really not hard, it just takes time. Darken there. And can you see how every time I darken one of these little corners, it really makes the petal on top stand out a lot more. And make sure you lose the edges and lose them in the direction of the growth of the petals, because then that's actually an extra bonus. You get a little bit more texture on your petals. There. You see that? Oh, thank you, Sophia Rose, and welcome. I'm so glad that you could make it here. You know, it's just one of those things. I really have the hardest time stopping with these things. I will, and what I have been, and I hope it's still recording. Yes, I am actually recording this with my good camera, so I'm thinking I'll upload the live stream and then I'll finish this painting the way I would finish it in the studio, and then I'll upload the cleaned up version, so to speak, where I have the final details on for you, because I want to wrap this up pretty soon. I wanted to just get enough in there for you to get the idea. And now I'm not looking at my reference photo, by the way. I'm just looking at my painting to see what it needs, because now I don't care about the reference photo, what it looks like. Now I care about what my painting looks like. And so now, because I took the masking off, and I would not have taken the masking off if I was just, you know, painting at home in my studio, which I am painting at home in my studio, but if I didn't have an audience, so to speak, I would have waited with taking off the masking fluid until I have put all these shadows on. But I can still, you know, I can paint around it. Can you see how it's beginning to, and I actually like my little bumblebee. How fun is that? I wanted to just take off the masking for you, so I can show you what that looks like with the masking off on the bumblebee. Whoops, I just dripped on his butt. Usually when you have masking fluid on, you'll always need to do some little adjustments. And then his little eye here. Ooh, he looks scary like that. So this needs to be tweaked a little bit, because anytime you have masking fluid on, the lines get very harsh, and that's not really what we want. So I'm just going to go in with a little detail brush, and I have so much pigment on this bumblebee that I don't need to have any pigment on. So just with a damp brush, I'm just kind of smudging out the lines a little bit, just so it doesn't look so harsh and stark. So just smudge him out a little bit here. but you still want to have those little areas of almost white that catches the light, because his, you know, see-through wings. And there's a white sparkle underneath his little buttski here that is not helpful, so let's just get rid of that. And then his eye, you know, I wanted him, because he does have, can you see that? It does look kind of bluish, I think. And it has that little bit of a sparkle. You know, anytime you paint something live, that's alive, you should always, even if it doesn't show in your photograph or in your reference, you should always, always, always give them that little white glint in the iris. And now I just put a little bit of cobalt blue on my brush here, and I want to make sure I don't lose that white sparkle in his eye completely. I just didn't want it that big. It's too big. Now I put a little bit of a darker color on. And just want to make sure that I don't lose. There's a little bit in here. I like to have a little bit of white sparkles in his little things there too. And actually, I noticed, can you see he does have some little white sparkles there? And you know what that is? I think it's the pollen from the flower. It's getting stuck to his little fuzzy body. So I'm just going to put a little bit of some yellow in here and there. There. I think he looks cute enough. What do you think? I mean, it looks like a bumblebee, doesn't it? And you can practice these things, like, you know, I showed you earlier. I practiced. And now I should really stop fussing with the poor little guy. I think he looks pretty cute. There. Okay. I think, let me just do one more, just one more. Any questions? Hi, Marcia. Oh, Oklahoma. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your kind words. I mean, I'm always afraid that, you know, I try to remember, and, you know, it's been a while, folks. Some of the people watching here, they under normal circumstances take live classes with me. And so it's been a while since I've taught a live class. It hasn't been since, you know, beginning of March. And you know, when I teach in the classroom, of course, you know, I have to talk and paint at the same time. And so I try to keep that skill up, because, you know, it's, I'm sure you know yourself, if you paint, it's easy to kind of get lost in the process and forget where you are and stuff. That's the beauty of painting. But anyway, what do you think? I think we can call it a day. Sorry, I got a tickle. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. All right, so I think I answered everything. And I am going to film the rest of the finishing touches on this one. But I wanted to show you that, see, you could totally frame it like that. And you can also frame it like that. And you could probably also frame it like that if you wanted to. Because, you know, these flowers, that's if it's like showing the flower is up, and then here the flower is like this to the side, and if it's like this, it's like this to the side. So I think either like that or like that. What do you think? I'm almost liking it like that. Anyway, I will wrap it up. And I think this was a fun project, and I have other ones actually on my YouTube channel, I have one where that's a very similar method. That's with a Gerbera daisy. So, and there I will have the tracing, and I will also have the photograph on my website, beautyonlocation.com. Later today I will get that on my website, but otherwise if you follow me on Facebook, Eva Nichols art, I think, is also my Facebook thing. I do have the tracing on my Facebook, and I also have the photograph and the tracing on my Instagram. And on Instagram I'm Eva Nichols Kunst. So I'll just type that in here and then I'll wrap it up. So that's at Eva Nichols Kunst on Instagram. Oops, Graham. And if you paint this and want to share it with me, you can hashtag it watercolor with Eva. That's my handle, or not my handle, this is my hashtag, I think is what it's called. I'm not all that techie. All right. Thank you for watching, folks, and I hope to see you again. I will try and do more live streams. I have done not quite a few, but I've done a few, and my biggest thing is that you know, I'm not being smart and having it like on a fixed day, and maybe I'll consider doing that, but oh, I don't know, maybe I have commitment phobia. Who knows? So thanks again, have fun painting, and see you soon, and lots of videos on my YouTube channel that you can have fun with, all sorts of subject matter, and also some color chart. I just did that. I did a whole exploration of getting to know your colors, painting color charts, and if you can't wrap your head around painting a painting, this is a wonderful way to get your watercolors out. And I wanted to show you, I have another YouTube video. I don't know if it's going to be YouTube, but I have this, I just finished this painting yesterday, so it's very different from this one here. This one's much more like realistic, and this one is much more painterly. But I finished painting this, and I filmed it, so it'll be a demo. I just don't know yet. It could be possibly on the Birgit O'Connor school, on her website, or it could be a Skillshare class, or it could be a YouTube video. I haven't decided yet, but it's still raw files, so it'll be a little while before it will be available. Just wanted to share that with you. And if you haven't already, I'd really ask you kindly to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's that little button that's right underneath subscribe. If you hit that one, and then there's a little bell next to it. If you hit the little bell, then you will get a notification every time I upload a new video or I start a live stream. So then you'll know, in case you don't see it on Facebook or Instagram, or read it in the newsletter that I send out. So thank you again, and see you soon. Have a happy day, and take good care, be safe, and I know a lot of our states are opening up, but it doesn't mean that we should just be running around like you did in the past. Unfortunately, that nasty virus is still out there, and just make sure it doesn't catch you. So take care, happy painting, see you soon.
Oh, so cute. So cute. Fits her perfect. Looks so cute. Cute. Oh, tabby. Just finished. Just finished my live stream. Next. Just finished. Next. Just finished my live stream. And reference. My website.